14th chapter of St. Matthew, beginning at the 22nd verse. Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead to the other side on the Sea of Galilee while he dismissed the crowds. And after he dismissed the crowds, he went up to the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But by this time the boat, battered by the waves, was far from the land, for the wind was against them. And early in the morning he came walking toward them on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified, saying, "It's a ghost." But they cried out in fear. And immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." So people got out of the boat, started walking on the water, and came toward Jesus. When he noticed the strong wind, he became frightened. And beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him, "Oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt?" When they got into the boat, the wind ceased. And those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." Here ends the gospel for the day. Please be seated. A week ago, last Tuesday, I was getting ready in detail to plan for my trip to go up to my 66th high school class reunion to see about 7 specific people whose relationships have been intact for probably at least 50 years or more, and then to see my brother who was said to be declining. I was told that he might not even recognize it. And so, as has been the case in the last number of times I've taken a trip, a few days before I start getting cold feet. But this time it was particularly bad. And I looked at myself and I said, I don't really want to go. So I was looking for things that possibly could happen. I might catch a cold or get something worse that was transmissible, and then I could have good reason to stay home. Or maybe I thought maybe one of you would call with some emergency. It would make it impossible for me to leave you because I cared so much. And as I was thinking, oh, maybe the airplane was having difficulty, but I got up Wednesday morning looking to see if I was intact, whole, ready to travel, and unfortunately I was. So I got the things together and we got a ride to the airport. And uncharacteristically, even though I have passed, lets me on early on the ship, on the airship, I waited till the last one practically, wondering if maybe they might give an incentive to pay because the ship was too full. But I remember crossing the threshold of the plane and saying, this is the hardest step. Once I get over it, things are going to be better. And they were. And that trip turned out to be one of the most significant I've ever taken. But making that initial jump was hard. I don't know why. I guess just because I was afraid. Afraid of what might happen. And once I got into the plane, I started thinking of things that would go right. Surely, if my brother was going to have any kind of rally, it would be with me coming, because he never wanted to appear weak to me. things got better and better. And it's so like the text for today, the gospel text. Let me set the picture for you a little bit. They've just had the feeding of the 5,000 with the crowds following Jesus. Jesus tells the disciples, go off into the boat. And he seemed to want to be alone. He dismissed the crowds and then he went up to pray, as he quite often did, but he wanted to be alone. He wanted to be alone from the crowds, as he did many times. And as he's there, the storms come in the night and blow the little ship, that little boat that the apostles had, it blows it around. And they are afraid. They're afraid for their lives. Where is this person that is with them that's supposed to protect them? But in the morning they see somebody coming and amazingly walk on the water. Now certainly that's an apparition, isn't it? And they're crawling out and they're saying it's a ghost. But Peter seems to have recognition. He says, I think it's Jesus. And he calls out. Peter, after Jesus said, don't be afraid, he said, if it really is you, command me to come to you. And he does come. And Peter takes a step and gets into the boat. And gets out of the boat. For if he's going to walk on water, the first thing he has to do is get out of the boat. The first thing that strikes me in this is, why did Peter even hesitate? When the command came for him to come, why didn't, before he came actually, why didn't he come? Just jump in. I guess the reality is that he had to make sure. Those people that want to walk on water have to make some kind of decision between foolishness and an actual legitimate call. And when we hear the voice of Jesus speaking to us, we have to take some time to really see if that's a real legitimate call from Jesus, or if it's something that's just popping up in ourselves, something to glorify ourselves. Command me to come to you. And Jesus says, come. Jesus wasn't looking for some athlete. This wasn't an athletic call. It was a call to obedience. Jesus didn't want a bungee jumper, some kind of hang glider, a day trader, a tornado chaser. This wasn't some kind of call to come out and test your physical strength. It was a call of obedience. And sometimes Jesus just asks us to do things that we'd really not rather experience. But then he tells them, I'm giving you an option. I'm giving you an option to experience something different. You want to walk on water? You want to make sure that it's me that you're talking to? Well, get out of the boat. Take that first step. And Peter then jumps in because he reasons, if I don't get out of the boat, I really will never experience this walking on water. And so he does. And that's the way it is with most of us, isn't it? When we have the ability to experience something special in our lives, something that will make a change, something that will stay with us the rest of our lives, we hesitate. Is this really something we want to do? Isn't staying in the boat a good option? But there is more to life, God tells us, than staying in the boat. There is a voice within us all that screams, you were made for something more than just avoiding failure. The boat represents the comfort zone that we have. It will cause us to stay comfortable and allow you to avoid radical discipleship, taking chances, or examining new adventures. Oh, how many things we passed up because we weren't willing to take the first step. So I might ask you today, what's your boat? What is that place that you stay in that robs you of new experiences, new challenges, new possibilities? I just visited somebody not very long ago who just experienced retirement. He had all the physical goods that anybody could want. I'm sure a good bankroll, a good pension retirement. And he said he was bored. He said there wasn't anything to do. And I said, how can you not have anything to do? Well, I guess I've just stagnated. Maybe you need to go beyond this place because all you're doing is being a caretaker for your own large home. I met with a woman who was in a very, very abusive relationship. She was not willing to get out of it. There is a certain security in this. And even though I experience on a daily basis some kind of verbal abuse, some kind of reassurance that I'm not loved, it's still safer than stepping out and trying a new life. At least I've got something to eat and a place to sleep. That's a boat. I know a pastor who's about to retire in a year and a half. He's not really right at this point for the congregation, nor is the congregation right for him. But he says, well, it's only a couple more years. I'll just bide time. Or maybe you could go someplace else. Maybe you could take a situation where you were on call, where you were substitute, a fill-in. Don't torture the congregation because you just want to stay in the boat. I talked to a person who has a dependency problem, wants to seek treatment because he's in his own chemical boat and unwilling to make the first step. So do you have a boat that you're stuck in? Because that's really the message of the text today. It's a whimsical text, but it's one of my favorites because it's kind of the prototype of the dichotomy between fear and faith. Do I step out, and while I still can, live all the life I can, or do I retire into some kind of chair, some kind of boat? You know what's the largest selling chair in America? I'm sure you all know. It's Lazy Boy. Not Risky Boy, not Rookie Boy. Well, then Peter does step off the boat. And what happens? He takes his eyes off Jesus. He looks around and he said, whoa, this is really windy. It's a storm. And suddenly he gets scared and he starts to sink. Isn't that the way it is with us? We make a decision to do something. Then first of all, we look back after we've taken the first step and we say, wow, maybe I should have done that. I've made commitments that I don't know if I want to honor. I'm going to do things that I'm not used to doing. I'm going to go places that are kind of scary. We start making excuses and wanting to go back. But Peter starts to sink. And Jesus grabs him and helps him. Well, he is any safer in the boat. The waters are bad. You might just get thrown out of the boat. You know, you can stay in bed and say, I'll just stay in bed and not go out today. And then you might be one of those statistics of 500,000 people that are taken to the emergency ward every year in America because they fell out of bed. The biggest surgery I've ever done was here at the church, playing ping pong at 11:30 at night, coming up and taking almost all the skin of one finger off, being taken to the emergency, and having the doctor laugh at me and say, wow, it's not often I get called in emergency at 11:30 for a ping pong accident. You are really a klutz. That's what he said. No place is safe. Every place is scary. So scary now I put on glove every time I get up there to play. Then I heard a terrible, disturbing statistic yesterday. 50,000 deaths a year now in America to suicide. 50,000. One every 10 minutes in America for people afraid to get out of the boat. So there's a little pundit that's written by a woman by the name of Eileen. She says you can live on bland food so as to avoid an ulcer, drink no tea, coffee, or other stimulants in the name of health, go to bed early, stay away from nightlife, avoid all controversial subjects so as never to give offense, mind your own business, avoid involvement in other people's problems, spend money only on necessity, and save all you can. You can still break your neck in the bathtub and we'll serve you right. I don't know if I agree with the last assessment, but it is an accurate statement. So the question then is, did Peter fail? No, Peter learned a lot. And so did the other apostles. They learned more about faith. And they learned that failure is not an event. Failure is a judgment. You understand that? Failure is not an event. Failure is something that you declare. It is a judgment. Jonas Salk, who created the vaccine for polio, tried 200 experiments before he discovered the right one. And it saved a nation. Sports figures understand that failure is a part of growing. Peyton Manning on his first quarterback attempt threw nothing practically but interceptions. Usually the strikeout leaders or the home run hitters in baseball are some that strike out the most, but they understand that failure is just temporary. It's just a learning process. It's something that you expect and you live with if you're going to grow and you're going to change and you're going to find new heights that your wife can rise to. Winston Churchill almost lost his political career by opposing Hitler during the Second World War. Winston Churchill, probably the most revered man in British history, flunked one of the grades in elementary school. One of the biographers was writing about him and said, I understand you failed in elementary school. And Churchill said, I never failed. I was always given a second chance to do something right. What a positive attitude. The biggest failures actually were the 11 apostles that stayed in the boat. They never had the experience of walking on water, even for a couple of steps. Water walking has several advantages. It's the only way to grow. You only grow if you try new things, try new experiences, and rise to new callings that God asks you to take on because you're a believer and because you have been redeemed by a Savior. Walking on water gives you new faith. And faith that is hard to break. One of the things that amazed me was Tuesday night. Tuesday night, I was staying at the home of people who I know very well. I've known for 40 years, who have a home in Maui, and also a condo, which we rent, and some of you stayed. At 4 o'clock on Wednesday morning, I heard a pounding on my bedroom door. And Gail said, "Wake up, wake up. Maui's on fire." And I got an email or a text from my daughter who lives in Maui Meadows, the one that does the programming for the condo. And there's a statement, this is the statement she wrote, and she read it from her phone. It said, "We don't know, Mom, if we're going to make it through this. The fires are all around us. So if we don't, we just want to thank you for all your love and your care for the last years of our life." They couldn't call the other child who lived on the other side of the island. They called for almost an hour and got no response. Gail was trembling like somebody who had an advanced case of Parkinson's. They sat down. There's only one thing we can do. We can pray. 4 o'clock in the morning, they started calling up everybody they knew after our prayer. When they called the last one, I said, "Do you really want to do that at 4 o'clock in the morning?" And they said, "Yeah, God needs to know about it now." I said, "I think he probably understands, probably sees it." Called the last one on the prayer list. And then they turned around and they said, "I guess there's nothing left to do to go to bed and go to sleep." We called everybody that we know that prays with us on a regular basis. And now it's in God's hands. Both daughters were fine. Walking is an alternative to stagnation and boredom. We just stay put. We get bored. And we lose our purpose. Water walking becomes a part of discovering and obeying your calling. Well, when is the last time you got out of the boat? Take a risk. Do something new and exciting that God called you to do that you really never expected you could or wanted to do. If you're going to accept that kind of a call, you understand that you will have failures, but they're only temporary. They're only a learning process. And God will always be there to help you get up, just like he did with Peter. But if you don't get out of the boat, and if you don't listen to the calls, the voice will get dimmer and dimmer until you no longer hear it. But again, if you listen to the voice, it's quite possible that you'll be able to walk on water. Amen. The insert in your bulletin, "I Saw the Light," is our sermon hymn. Please stand as you were able.